Hello and welcome everyone to a April 6th edition of BlindEyeLive. What day is it? I think it's the 6th. Tuesday, April 6th edition of BlindEyeLive. I am your host, Blind Eye himself, Hunter King, owner, proprietor of Blind Eye Media, a really tiny internet media company. And I've got a show for you today. We will get into the Deshaun Watson case. I meant to talk a little bit about. I think I mentioned something about it yesterday. But there has been a little more information now, or should I say, a couple of the complainants. The two of the women suing him are, I should say, plaintiffs, or have apparently spoken out. So I'm gonna pull up that info here in a bit. We will get into some NFL news. There have been a couple transactions. One of them big. I guess I should have put that in my title. Sam Darnold got traded yesterday. Apparently right before I went live. Or while I was live. It might have happened while I was live. Sam Darnold got traded. And I missed it yesterday. If I had not thrown my phone away yesterday and actually looked at the text messages coming in from my group chat, I would have had that live on air. The one time I choose not to check my phone, to just yeet it out of here, I miss live breaking news. Good job, me. But yeah, so we'll get into some NFL news, and then back into the show, I will be doing my, I believe I put AFC North primer. I forgot what I've titled my stream already, because I'm a genius. Nor do I have my phone or my iPad to check, because I don't think, oh wait, I have the ability to check right here. I'm being stupid again. So yeah, let's see here. My subscriptions. I did put NFC North. I'm a genius. I wonder if there's a way I can edit my header like while I'm doing this. Or if I would need to go into YouTube to do that instead. Do 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 do. Okay. That didn't help me. Let me. You know what, guys? I don't know if I can change the title. Well, then we're rolling with it. NFC North Division Preview today. That's not too hard. I've looked over all the teams already. So that will be what we are up to today. So instead of the AFC North, we're doing the NFC North, baby, because anarchy. Who cares about an order or anything? Total chaos. Okay. We're gonna. Sorry, I'm having to shift my view here for later. So, with that being said, gotta change of plans on the show today, baby. So let's get into the. After a laugh, let's get into the Deshaun Watson case. So Deshaun Watson, I think I mentioned yesterday, he is now up to 22 lawsuits. 22 lawsuits. Two of those women today have spoken out apparently. Um, about, sorry, I am pulling up or trying to get the article pulled up now. Boom. All right. So let's jump into this. Nope, not what I want to move. Sorry, I'm still learning how to quickly move stuff around. No, I want the video capture device. Move things around so they're not in the way. Eventually, I'll get quicker at this. So, boom. So let's get into it. So two women who have filed lawsuits versus Deshaun Watson, alleging sexual misconduct, have spoken out. This article is by Sarah Barshop. She is ESPN's main Texans beat writer. Let's see. Let's scan this. Ashley Solis, whom lawyer... she messed that up. Lawyer Tom Busby said was the first massage therapist to file a lawsuit against Watson, spoke at a news conference. Lauren Baxley wrote a letter to Watson that was read by lawyer Cornelia Brandfield Harvey. So I guess that was the another one of the complainants. I got into massage therapy to heal people, Solis said. Ooh, man, I wish this... Sorry, I'm having to kind of shift so I can read. Once again, blind guy here. To heal... I got into massage therapy to heal people. To heal their minds and bodies. To bring people... or to bring peace to their souls. Deshaun Watson has robbed me of that. He took that away from me. He tainted a profession in which I take enormous pride. I suffer from panic attacks, anxiety, and depression. I'm in counseling as a result of Deshaun Watson's actions. I hope he knows how much pain he has inflicted on me emotionally and physically, and I hope he knows how much pain he's inflicted on these other survivors. Well, that's a pretty brutal statement. Continuing, people say that I'm doing this just for money, Solis said. That is false. I come forward now so that Deshaun Watson does not assault another human being. Another woman. Sorry. Another woman. Need to get her words right. Which, okay. That's admirable, but it's like, I stop here because I've said this before. Civil lawsuits get monetary damages. Now, maybe you're thinking suing him in civil court and taking his money will stop him from sexually assaulting anyone else. You know what will actually stop a sexual assaulter? If he has sexually assaulted 22 women, he's going away for the rest of his life. If he's in criminal court, then he literally couldn't sexually assault anyone else. So I'm trying to figure out why they're in civil court and not criminal court. Busby said in the news conference that Solis and at least one other of his clients have provided statements to the police. So they have provided statements to the police, but there's no criminal case yet. I wonder when they brought these statements as well. Because if they did this just before or around the time they filed the civil suits or afterward, that means there was nothing to investigate until now for the police. Now, if they gave statements immediately upon these happening, which Solis, I believe, her incident happened last March. I know that out of the first two lawsuits filed, one was March, one was April. But one was filed in one incident happened in April, one in March, one in August. Sorry. If Solis gave this testimony to the police a year ago, it would have already been thoroughly investigated by now, and there would likely be a court hearing coming up. Or more than a hearing. Potentially, like, we might be in a criminal case or coming up shortly, like the actual court proceedings. Now, the law moves slow, and it's intended to move slow for thorough investigation of evidence, so that justice can be done. To me, them going to civil court, these are the red flags for me on a civil court proceeding. Civil courts don't require, because there's no like criminal charges necessarily, civil courts don't require the same burden of proof for judgments necessarily as criminal proceedings. So you're looking at, say, a civil proceeding, or in this case, preceding any criminal proceedings. In many cases like this, usually civil cases come after criminal proceedings, which to me telegraphs that Mr. Busby doesn't believe that any of these cases would work in criminal court. Or he's trying to use the new lay of the land, if you will, for our society as a means to start civil proceedings first and use those to go into criminal proceedings, but that would still be weird. And would also muddy criminal proceedings. I don't know. This is really weird. Because to me, if the intention is to stop a predator from predating on people, lock him up, go to criminal court, get this man put behind bars. Because even if this is the stated goal, is to stop this predator, if they think that taking money from him is going to be incentive enough to stop, I don't know if that's the case. Because this guy has lots of money. And he has the ability to make more money because he's recently or last year signed a contract extension that I believe kicks in this year. That is one of the 3-4 richest contracts in NFL history. $40 million a year. So with that being said, this is to me, this is still just a strange situation. And once again, if all this stuff did happen the way it did, and this is the way they're going about it. I think they're going about it wrong. If all these incidents happened, and they have proof that they happened, take it to criminal court. The thing is, from what I'm gonna guess, they only have personal testimony. And if Watson's camp is to be believed, some of these cases, they already have definitive proof that they did not or could not have happened. Although they haven't shared that yet either, which they have no obligation to at this time. Although, if they did have definitive proof, I would want to get that out in the media and not wait for the court date anyway. I mean, because obviously they're still going to have the court date, but Watson's not trying, or right now isn't fighting very hard to necessarily totally. It doesn't seem that way that he's trying to like destroy these women in public yet. Which probably is actually a good strategy in today's cultural climate. Which when I say all these things, I am not a lawyer. I've just followed a lot of legal cases, and I'm giving you my non-expert opinion on things. But it's still just this is a hard situation, which is why we should reserve judgment until we have more facts and until cases are actually being presented. Busby said in the news conference that Solis and at least one of the... Okay, that's where it was. On Friday, the Houston Police Department said in a statement that it has launched an investigation of Watson after a confidential... or a complainant... Yeah, complainant or complainant filed a report. Is it complainant or complainant? Anyway. So the Houston Police Department is just now been filed an actual formal complaint this past weekend. And I get this, it's like this, and this is the big narrative that one of the big narratives is that one of the big narratives right now in all of this is that, or in modern society, is that victims, or that victims basically have an excuse for not coming out immediately with allegations because of the power dynamics of whatever happened, or, da-da-da-da. We need to be vehemently encouraging people that are actual victims. It needs to be plastered everywhere that you need to come forward as soon as possible. Because the sooner you come out with allegations, the easier it is to prosecute and the easier it is to get justice. But we've not done that. And I think that's a big issue. Because anytime an actual victim comes forward, regardless of when it happens, it's needed that they need to come forward. We need to get justice for legitimate victims. And I'm not saying that to say these aren't legitimate victims, because I'm not. We don't know yet. But we need to be encouraging people to come out as soon as possible. Stop waiting a year to come forward, because it hurts your case. It hurts your ability to get justice. And from a criminal standpoint, it makes a criminal investigation insanely hard, because in many of these cases, any physical evidence that could have been that could prove your claims potentially, these can't be founded now. We can't investigate these things as easily now. You're asking people to remember potential witnesses of certain things, like not necessarily the act, but people who could corroborate people being in certain places at certain times specifically. It's gonna, unless they have like a written down record that we know was taken at the time and can be confirmed. I mean, there's no evidence. Like, and this is why they're in civil court and not criminal court, because I'm going to guess that all of these allegations are going to amount to he said, she said. And if, say, because when they're, it's like some of the stuff they're using the term sexual misconduct more than sexual assault. Although some of the complaints, I believe, use the term assault. What I'm going to guess is there was no, or from all of this, is there was no, like, intercourse type contact, so there would be no DNA evidence or anything. Like, they don't have any, like, physical evidence. And it almost seems like they've been sitting on these stories for long enough, which, once again, if all these things happened, Watson needs to have consequences. This is just it. My thing is, I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around why we're doing 22 civil cases and a criminal investigation has just now been launched, and all of these accusations are like, I don't know what the most recent ones are, but it seemed like most of these were happening, or at least the early ones, it was between March and August of last year during the pandemic. Although it seems that, I don't remember what exactly the timeline was with the first, or the woman who was in the SI story that I mentioned last week, or that I mentioned, maybe I did mention on Friday's show last week, but a Sports Illustrated show had come out, or article had come out, and she was talking about and this woman who is not one of the people who has filed a lawsuit. This is another massage therapist who had Watson as a client, said that he had exhibited the same pattern of behavior. She had gone to that lawyer, but she had chosen not to get involved with this law firm because she didn't feel good about it. She didn't like the idea of having to sign, like, it was some kind of contract, which, I mean, I guess you sign, or when you hire a lawyer, there's a contract drawn up or something, but maybe it's like she didn't feel comfortable with that contract, which also raises red flags, that you have someone who, while anonymously, has come forward and stated that it's like, this happened to me, I believe these women, but I don't trust this lawyer or this law firm. I don't know, this is just, it's interesting. And I'm not going to get into some of the conspiracy theories. Well, I'm not going to come up with any conspiracy theories, but there is a theory going around that this woman is a plant by that law firm to add credibility, while, to try and add credibility to the claims of the women. Yes, by potential, the thing that pokes a bunch of holes in that is like, well, yeah, but wouldn't they also be, hurting their own credibility? They're probably only hurting their own credibility with people who already don't find them credible. Is the best countervailing argument to that, and I don't know, but that is a half-baked theory that I've seen going around the internet. I personally don't buy it. That she's a plant, it wouldn't make any sense. So that's what's going on with the Deshaun Watson case. Well, there's more to this story. Let me see what else here. As with any allegation, the Houston Police Department is now conducting an investigation and will not comment further during the investigative process. Well, that makes sense. That's still like, because people have been talking about the criminal or potential criminal procedures, because especially for all the people who just immediately believe these women, like they're like, well, why isn't there a criminal case going on? And they're blaming the police department. Well, you can't blame the police department for investigating something they've been given no reason to investigate up until this point. Watson's lawyer, Rusty Hardin, said in a statement on Friday that he and Watson will fully cooperate with the Houston Police Department. We welcome the long overdue development, Hardin said. Now, we will learn the identity of at least one accuser. We will fully cooperate with the Houston Police Department. Which and this was, I think, was on Friday, or whatever. Of course, we now know that, or the names of two of the accusers have come forward Monday. Which that's the other reason, or another thing about civil lawsuits compared to like criminal cases. Well, in some criminal cases, like identities will be hidden too, but I don't know when exactly in like the civil cases people would have to actually come forward with their own names. I don't know. In a letter Monday to Texans season ticket holders, remember I'm not a lawyer, that is regularly sent in, or which is in a letter Monday to Texas season's ticket holders that is regularly sent in the spring, the McNair family addressed the civil lawsuit and a complaint filed with the Houston Police Department against Watson, saying, "We want to assure you that we take these allegations very seriously. While we await the conclusion of these investigations, we express our strong stance against any form of sexual assault. Our family and the entire Houston, Texas organization are deeply troubled at any form of abuse, and we condemn this type of behavior." Everyone, except for sexual assaulters and rapists, condemn this type of behavior. The fact is, in this situation, we don't know if that behavior actually happened yet or not. So there's nothing to condemn. I hate like these statements to get out in front of controversy that, that really serve no purpose except to make yourself look good, when, you have no reason to look bad. But welcome to modern society. Let's see. We'll get into transaction news here in a little bit. I wanted to cover another one because this is kind of related. So Minnesota Vikings cornerback Jeff Gladney, their first-round pick last year, turns himself in on an assault charge. That is a slightly misleading headline, because it's not an assault, just an assault charge. It is a family violence assault charge. Police said the charges stem from an incident on Friday where Gladney allegedly assaulted a 22-year-old woman. Now Gladney is 24. This happened in Dallas. What I am assuming, which once again, this is not fact. I've stated the facts. The assumption here is that this 22-year-old woman is like a living girlfriend, or like is a girlfriend. It's possible it could be like a relative, but I'm assuming this is like some kind of girlfriend. I don't know if it's like, we don't know who she is, so we don't know if it's like a baby mama. We don't know if it's like some college girlfriend, if this was just some random hookup, but they say family, so there has to me that states some kind of like either some sort of relationship that's either familial or intimate. So that's a blow for the Vikings, and a blow for one of my best friends who's a TCU fan who loves the guy. Sorry, bro. Um, and obviously there's not a lot of information out. Maybe it was some kind of verbal blow up that someone is upset and said whatever, but I'm gonna say it. This is probably because this happened so quickly, and because he turned himself in. Something happened Friday. We'll see if he actually did anything or not. Just unfortunate situations. Sad, really, but that's a blow to the Vikings secondary because this means he's probably guaranteed to get some kind of personal conduct violation from the league, which means he'll miss some time this season. And Gladney is like the cornerstone of their secondary rebuild, like for the long-term future. Yes, they signed Patrick Patterson this offseason, but Gladney was a big investment last year. Forget. In this browser, I have to do everything by clicks. So yeah. So that's that kind of unhappy, sad news. Would it please? There we go. So with that being said, we're gonna get into some other news. I don't necessarily need the stuff up for that. Quentin Dunbar, cornerback who played for the Seahawks last year, has signed with the Detroit Lions. Actually, you know what? I am going to double check that. Yeah. Signed with the Lions on a 1-year deal. I want to say Dunbar started his career with the Lions, but I might be wrong. But I do know he played for the Seahawks last year. He battled some injuries, ended up having a season-ending knee surgery. But he had an interception and 5 passes deflected. He was really good the previous couple years. He's 28, so he's definitely not over the hill. Good buy low move by the Lions for their secondary, who are hoping to see a big improvement from Jeff Okudah in year 2, and who cut Justin Coleman this offseason. I don't think I've seen him sign anywhere, but it's possible I missed it because it was probably like a small signing. In other transaction-related news, you had the Sam Darnold trade yesterday. So Carolina has acquired Sam Darnold from the New York Jets in exchange for a 6th-round pick in 2021 and 2nd and 4th-round picks in 2022, which is an interesting haul because I was sitting here thinking a 2nd and a 5th maybe for Darnold, or a 2nd with Darnold and a 5th going the other way, something like that, either like a move up in the draft kind of scenario. The other team still has the same number of picks, it's just they're flipping when they're picking. But the Panthers gave up a pretty good amount to get him, which the cost there was the Jets get a 6th-rounder this year, which they have a lot of draft capital this year. I think it's honestly kind of, if they were able to get more picks and get like a 2nd and 4th next year, instead of getting like a 2nd-round pick this year, but maybe not getting the same, or being able to get the 4th and the 6th attached. I think that was a good move for the Jets. It gives them more ammunition in the future. A 2nd-round pick next year. That's a cheap 4-year contract that starts next year for a guy who you're banking on being a starter caliber player, and probably a good one at that. And if you're the Jets and you're ready to move on from Darnold and you don't think he's your guy going forward, maybe you also don't think he's going to work out there. So that second round pick next year could be high. I mean, the Panthers are drafting 8th this year, and the Falcons, who are drafting 4th overall, the Falcons should be better this year. I think they've made a definite upgrade at head coach, and bringing a guy who is from that Shanahan tree, so bringing back an offensive style that worked really well for them a few years ago, although it's a little more power oriented than the Falcons were back in 2016. You have Julio, you have Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley is super good now. And whatever Atlanta decides to do in the draft, I like some of their offseason moves too, but like kind of around the edges of their roster, but they've got holes to fill through the draft. I'm not saying they're going to be a contender right away, but I think Atlanta should be better. I look at their roster, and yeah, they also lost Alex Mack, but I don't see like one of the 5 worst rosters in the league or one of the 4 worst rosters in the league there, and I think they improved. At the head coaching position, and this is going to benefit Matt Ryan significantly. And Matt Ryan is still a really, really good quarterback. The Falcons hit this draft right. I think they could be like a middle of the pack, maybe even a fringe playoff contender this year, depending on how well their offense does and how their defensive rebuild goes, or the beginnings of that take shape. Because they do have some pieces, like you've got Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones. I think Ricardo Allen is still back at safety. I believe they let Keanu Neal walk after 2 big, heavy season-ending injuries. Probably a good move. I think they had another one of their safeties. I think it was Casey was a free agent, but I think they brought Casey back. And if so, that's good because their safety position then would be solid. They've got some young corners. They're still needing to work on the pass rush, but like the edge rush. But I would say that they have some pieces there. This team shouldn't be this bad in that division. The Saints, yes, they're losing Drew Brees. They still have Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston in there, and they still have a really good roster. They've had to make some hard choices this offseason. And they lost Trey Hendrickson, but I think his sack production was a little over what you would have expected based on his like actual pressure numbers, his overall pressure numbers. And it's so out of line with where he was that I think, and Marcus Davenport has dealt with some injuries, but he's a physical freak, and he has been productive when he's been healthy. And you still got Cameron Jordan, and where they're picking at the end of the first round would be a good spot for edge rusher. And I think where they're picking at the end of the second round, there should be some good like developmental edge rushers in that range too. And they got Hendrickson with like a 3rd round pick, I think it was. So, sorry, I had to cough there. I don't think the Saints are going to drop like precipitously necessarily. We'll see. They're a big wild card this year about like how they're going to fare. But they have a top tier offensive line, elite offensive line. They still have Michael Thomas. Taysom Hill is still a dynamic player. Alvin Kamara is one of the best playmakers in the NFL. You've still got Cam Jordan. I believe Demario Davis is still there at linebacker. You still have some like good young pieces on the D line around Cam Jordan, because I believe Shai Tuttle's still there. He's a solid um, interior defensive lineman. You have a really good secondary, Marshawn Lattimore. I think Janoris Jenkins is still under contract there, but I might be wrong. But I think they re-upped him. They retained Marcus Williams on the franchise tag at safety. They have pieces, so they're good. And then you have the Buccaneers, who right now probably should be title favorites. Their roster is, they didn't lose. I think their biggest loss, like I think they lost Ndamukong Suh. I can't remember if they brought him back or not. If they re-signed Suh, I don't know if they actually lost really anything significant on their defense. And even then, he's replaceable at this stage of his career. And their offense, they didn't lose any of their key offensive players, unless if Ronald Jones was a free agent and they didn't bring him back. But I don't know if he's like a significant loss. The Bucs are stacked. And they're stacked with a lot of young players, too. Like, Chris Godwin probably could still get a little better. You've got guys like Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson, who at different points in the year had big games as complementary options. Those guys are still young. Miller, I think it was year 2. Johnson was a rookie. Those guys will still improve. Probably, or should they still have room for growth. And they're like your 3rd, 4th, 5th receivers on that team. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Devin White in year 2, all pro, and he can still there's still definite areas where he can very much improve. Their secondary, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy Bunting, Antonio Winfield Jr., all young guys who are still getting better. Like, the Bucs could be better this year than they were last year, and that's incredible. And they have a draft to add more young talent, more upside, and depth to the roster without losing really anyone of consequence this offseason. The Bucs are going to be at the top of around the top of the league unless Tom Brady actually finally craters, and I'm not betting on that yet. I've been expecting it every year, and I'm done. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not going to predict it anymore. He is waging one of the most successful wars against Father Time we have ever seen. With that being said, because the reason I went through that whole breakdown of the NFC South was that the Jets probably could expect, because even though the Panthers, you think they'd be better in year 2, especially with like a healthy year from Christian McCaffrey, but they made some tough choices this year. They cut Kawhi short. They have questions at a lot of different places. They lost Curtis Samuel, one of their most consistent players last year. He's now on the Redskins. They're still not. There's still questions all around their roster, and I think they're probably still going to be last in that division this year, meaning that the Jets are probably going to get at least as high of a second-round pick as they got from the Panthers this year, and it could end up higher, because if Atlanta's better this year, that means it's likely that they could beat Carolina twice this year. That's 2 losses. I'm going to guess that the Bucs are going to beat the Panthers twice this year. The Saints, could very well beat the Panthers twice this year still. They could go 0-6 in their division this year. And it's like, and if you're going 0-6 in your division, you're probably not doing too well the rest of your schedule. Which I don't think is a reflection on the front office or the coaching staff of the Panthers as much as they started a rebuilding period last year. They were hoping Teddy Bridgewater could maybe be better than what he is. And Bridgewater he's not moving your ceiling. If you're a really, really good team, he can keep from making mistakes and like blowing games. But at this point, I don't think Teddy Bridgewater's a guy who's going to go out there and make like he's more limited as a passer than like Mac Jones or Nick Foles. And Nick Foles isn't like a really good quarterback. But Foles' arm looks like it's disappearing. So maybe but Teddy Bridgewater doesn't seem that much better than, say, Nick Foles. A lot of people are talking about Mac Jones, this and that. Mac Jones has a great deep ball. Like, Teddy Bridgewater doesn't. Teddy Bridgewater is a check down machine. He is a short game machine. But you need to be able to make plays down the field, and you need to be able to manipulate defenses, and he doesn't do that. He's not spreading defenses out. If anything, defenses are able to kind of play tighter, and the tighter your scheme is, you can. There's not going to be as many gaps underneath. So, like Teddy Bridgewater is more limited as a passer than Alex Jones was before his leg injury. And people talk about Alex Smith being like a check down artist, not getting the ball down, pushing the ball downfield. Teddy Bridgewater, he's one of the worst like downfield passers of like the last decade. And that's one of the reasons he fell in the draft he was in. There's a reason Blake Bortles was the first one drafted. There's a reason Johnny Manziel was drafted ahead of Teddy Bridgewater. When Bridgewater went to try and drive the ball downfield, he had no drive. His long passes had some flutter to him. And when you're throwing up ducks, it makes the life for a free safety really, really fun. So, if Sam Darnold, though, has all the tools, if Matt Rule and Joe Brady can resurrect Sam Darnold's career and get him on track to being the prospect that most of us thought he was, and can get him towards being the player that most of us believed he could be, 80 to 85% of Darnold's ceiling is a much better quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater. And a much more dynamic quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater. So I would definitely say that that Carolina, I think, made a good move here. Even if you're thinking, yeah, but there's some really good quarterback prospects. You could have them for like cheaper for longer. What that tells me is I think Carolina has a plan for that first round pick and how to build the team around Darnold. And that instead of banking on having a super cheap quarterback, I think what they're thinking is if Darnold works out this year, they'll work out, or shows promise this year, they'll work out an extension going into his fifth-year option, which has been picked up season, which is like $19 million. If they could work out an extension where he's making, especially with the way money's moving, they can get him at $25 million or less a year, which I think is very possible even after a promising or very promising Darnold season. It's worth it. And if Darnold just really lights the world on fire, I'm sure the Panthers would be totally fine extending him for whatever if it works out. This would then allow them in the first round to target an elite, maybe pass catcher to go along with DJ Moore. So you're sitting here at 8 right now, and you're sitting here 1 through 3 are going to be quarterbacks. We know Zach Wilson. Well, I say we don't know that Zach Wilson. We know a quarterback is going to the Jets. We know Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 to the Jaguars. We know that the 49ers are picking 3. From what we're hearing, Zach Wilson at 2, Mac Jones at 3 seems to be or what most people are thinking is going to happen. What the word is. I'm more convinced of Wilson going 2 than Jones going 3. But we'll see. Atlanta at 4, I don't think they're drafting a quarterback. I think and the news this day, this dovetails together. Atlanta has said they're open to trading down from the 4th pick, meaning they're not looking at quarterback this year. You can be like, yeah, but Matt Ryan's in his mid-30s, and you should go ahead and start planning for the future. They're locked into Matt Ryan's contract for the next 2 years. If anything, they have so much offensive talent, skill position talent, and it's like if you can move down a few spots, pick up some extra picks, you're going to help deepen and cheapen your roster moving forward. Get cheap young talent that you can develop. I think the Falcons should try and trade down. If they don't, though, or depending on how far they trade down, whatever. If they don't, I say take Kyle Pitts right there. You take Kyle Pitts at 4, and you make people try and cover Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Hayden Hurst, Russell Gage. Russell Gage is a really good slot option. If you got him working with Jones, Ridley, and Pitts, Gage could turn into Cole Beasley with the Bills, or that one year he really popped off for the Cowboys. I think I think it would be a really smart move for the Falcons. So, but yeah, so Panthers get Darnold. I will say not having a 2nd and 4th next year is kind of a little bit of a bold strategy, but they'll be getting a good compensatory selection for Samuel, probably a 4th round pick for Curtis Samuel. So, and they're only giving up a 6th this year. I thought Darnold was worth a 2nd round pick, but the Panthers are banking on that they'll improve to where it'll be a late or mid to late 2nd round pick rather than earlier than they are right now. But I'm not necessarily sold on that. I think the Jets pushing that 2nd round pick to next year, they're probably guaranteed a pick in at least the same range, if not higher, in the 2nd round. I think they're going to get a good 2nd round pick out of this. And that doesn't mean that Darnold's going to fail either. Darnold could look totally fine, and the Panthers could be, a bottom level or a bottom, 10, bottom 10, bottom 5 team this year. So, but I like the trade for both teams. For the Jets, once again, moving that pick to into next year, that 2nd round pick, because they've got 2 first rounders and 2 2nd rounders this year. They've got plenty of draft capital right now for this year. Have multiple selections next year. Give yourself more future flexibility for trades and stuff like that too. So I like it. Because it also helps to not have a ton of guys coming up for free agency at the exact same times. But they're putting themselves for next year to have 2 first round picks and 2nd round picks again, like they do this year. So, So, with that being said, oh, this is another thing I want to talk about. So I guess I'll get into this before I get into the draft rundown. I should have put this on the title too, or maybe I should have come up with a different title. The NCAA title game happened last night, and it was not the barn burner that I expected. Baylor dominated Gonzaga from the tip. Their athleticism was too much for Gonzaga's army of light complexion people. Like they had two, I think, Baylor caliber athletes on their team in Suggs and Oyayi. Everyone else was just overmatched. Kispert once again looked kind of bad. He had on two occasions layups just obliterated by Baylor bigs, or I couldn't believe the ball survived. Baylor just dominated them physically, and also shooting. Like, their perimeter guys were just drilling shots, just like they were against Houston. But they had a physical advantage over Gonzaga that, like, they didn't necessarily have over Houston. Houston was still getting some rebounds. I think Baylor still out-rebounded them, but Houston was doing pretty well on the offensive glass still, but mostly that's because they were missing so many shots. Gonzaga did not have anyone who could physically match up with Baylor. And even though their starting center, Flo Thamba, fouled out with a decent amount of the second half to go, they just put that, was it Vital, number 11? Just, dude, he looks like an NFL, like, defensive end or tight end. I think he's like 6'6", 6'7", something like that. I'm going to say he's probably like 6'6", but his shoulders were, it was almost like his shoulders were like 5 feet wide. Dude was hulked, man. And he had 8 offensive rebounds in the game. Just offensive. He was dominant on the boards. They just physically dominated Gonzaga. And they were allowed to play a little physically defensively. Like, I mean, they were literally chest to chest at all times. They were in Gonzaga's shirts. And Gonzaga just didn't have that ability because they didn't have the athleticism to do it. Really. And as hard as, some of Gonzaga's guys tried, this was a game that showed a lot of, I would say that this game exposed, some people were saying this game exposed Jalen Suggs. No, it didn't expose Jalen Suggs. It just showcased that when Suggs ran into a team that had a bunch of athletes on his level or close to his level, that when he got frustrated early in the game, one of the reasons they went down early is because Gonzaga started playing really fast. And Gonzaga likes to play with tempo, but they were playing out of control. Suggs is an aggressive player, but he got a little out of control early on, picked up 2 early fouls, although that charge was bullcrap. Mitchell comes flying across, and like his left leg isn't set, like when contact happens. Like, he's twisted up like it was, Mitchell like just dove in there, and my dad was watching, he's like, well, he elbowed him in the face. I said, Dad, Suggs is allowed to move his arms. He didn't purposefully elbow Mitchell. He was moving the ball away and preparing to shoot. Mitchell came flying in out of nowhere. If he doesn't try and dive in for a charge, he doesn't take that elbow to the face. And which I have my own issue with charges. Like, I think the charge call is fine. I think it's the way that a lot of charges happen, is these guys coming and lunging out of nowhere to get in front of a driving player. And the only point there is to create contact that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I think that's the defender initiating contact. because he's having to move to a position to get in front of that spot. He wasn't actively necessarily in front. It's one thing when like there's a guy near the basket and he just stands his ground and the guy just runs through him. It's another thing entirely when like to me these guys slide into position like right at the last possible second. To me that should be a foul on the defender. And the Mitchell one just wasn't a charge. He should have been called for the foul. Cuz he wasn't square, he wasn't planted, he was nothing. He just lunged in front of Suggs. Which that was Suggs' first foul of the game. But Baylor dominated because even with all that, like Baylor was just drilling shots. Mitchell, Butler, was it Thames? I think his name's like Thames or Thames or whatever. Like they were just drilling shot after shot after shot after shot after shot. I need to look up Baylor's like shooting percentages from the last two games, particularly like Baylor in the first half against Houston. Although they were still fairly hot in the second half, but that whole game against Gonzaga, they full pulled that sucker, and Gonzaga just. And this is going to be the case with Gonzaga basically probably forever. There's a reason Gonzaga was able to go undefeated. Yes, they played some tough non-conference teams, but they play the West Coast Conference. They're in the West Coast Conference. It's not a deep, tough conference. And they ran into a team in Baylor and UCLA. UCLA wasn't even like the best team from the Pac-12, although they were the hottest one in the tournament. They barely were able to escape UCLA. They couldn't escape Baylor because Baylor's a better, more talented team than UCLA. And they were just supremely athletic. Because one of the big things that UCLA had going for it in the game against Gonzaga was Riley was able to, for a lot of the game, be a physical presence. Baylor had multiple of those guys. And it showed. Because even when Flo Thamba went out, Baylor was still able to dominate on the glass. And actually, I think their rebounding went up because that Vital dude, whatever, just 8 rebounds. 8 offensive rebounds. Sorry, 8 offensive, just offensive. He might have had like double that number the entire, or like in total. It was brutal. So, Baylor University, your 2020-2021 NCAA champions, and deservedly so. Once again, the undefeated team loses in the tourney. Also, an interesting fact about this was like the 5th or like the 6th time, I think, 5th or 6th time in NCAA history where the teams that started off ranked 1 and 2 came into the game ranked 1 and 2. And the number 2 team has won every single time. So with that being said, we are going to move into my NFC North division preview. I was going to do the AFC this week and then the NFC next week, but it's in the title, so I have to do it, right? So yeah, I was already on where I wanted to be. So we're going to go, once again, in order of when these teams will be picking. So we're starting with the Detroit Lions. The Lions have no, like, round 6, 7 picks. All their picks are in the first 5 rounds. They've got 2 in the 3rd, The 101 pick is a compensatory selection that the Rams sent to them as part of the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff deal. So, I don't have my. Do what I want you to do. There we go. And then. Whoop. Boom. So, at pick 7, hit the wrong button. At pick 7, I think the Lions need to focus offense. They need to they need to replenish weapons. They lost Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones. I don't know if they brought back any of their top receivers from last year, off the top of my head now. They have T.J. Hawkinson at tight end, and Goff likes his tight ends, and I think Dan Campbell is going to play a more physical style. Well, he's going to play a more physical style of football. I think he's going to bring a lot of what the Saints do. And, they were a big fan of running like Jared Cook and Josh Hill, Jared Cook and Taysom Hill, multiple tight end sets. I think you're going to see a lot of that with the Lions. So I wouldn't rule out Kyle Pitts if he's available. Just pairing Pitts and Hawkinson. Hawkinson is very much a standard inline guy. Pitts can also do that, but this would allow you to move Pitts around, but also put them together in 2 tight end sets. I think Pitts to just about any team, like, he's going to upgrade that position for almost everyone. But he's also he's a inline tight end, but he is also a supersized outside receiver. Like, he's an elite receiver and elite tight end kind of fused together is the way I view him. So you'll hear me talk about a lot of teams like in this range. If they decide, if they decide that we are big fans of T.J. Hawkinson, and I think they are big fans of T.J. Hawkinson, but I think they're like, we've got to go wide receiver, which, once again, Kyle Pitts, really a supersized receiver. I would say I would go for like some kind of speed demon. Well, if Devontae Smith is there, I think Chase will be gone by this point. If Smith and Waddle are there, I personally would take Smith because he's the better receiver. Smith is very much the better receiver of the two, but Waddle is a really good receiver. He's not just speed. I think he's a much more polished receiver than Henry Ruggs was last year. Not quite as explosively powerful as Ruggs necessarily, but like he's as faster, and he's much quicker, much more agile. I think I think Pitts, Smith, Waddle, one of those 3 guys should be the pick here for Detroit. Although you could argue that if Sewell or Slater are here, you take one of them and improve your offensive tackle position. But they have Taylor Decker. So I don't know. I would say go wide receiver. And while it is a deep like pass catcher class, the Lions need an elite top end pass catcher. You can get a right tackle later in this draft. This is a super deep, talented tackle class. So that's what I would do. Up top is pass catcher at 7 for the Lions. At 41, this is probably where I would add to the edge rushing cupboard probably. Well, the Lions could go just about any way. They've got a lot of stuff. If you're going edge rusher around 41, maybe Jalen Phillips' injuries concerns have caused him to slip. Snag Jalen Phillips, feel really good about it. Put him next or across from Trey Flowers, and y'all have some real fun there. More likely, maybe Azeez Ojulari's there. You take him and you get this great speed rusher. This pure speed rusher to pair with Trey Flowers, who's more of a power guy on the other side. Or you double down and you take Joseph Asai out of Texas, and you have two just powerful, brutal power rushers collapse in the pocket on either side. Or go full upside with Jason Away and get the fastest edge rusher I think ever recorded. With a 4.3 4.40. But there's a lot of ways Detroit could go here. You could draft a cornerback in the second round this year to pair a young corner with across from Jeff Okudah. In this range, maybe Asante Samuel Jr. is there. Elijah Molden of Washington should be there. But yeah, I don't know about other than those two guys if there's really anyone. Oh, Kelvin Joseph of Kentucky. Those would be the three guys I would say probably in that range. Unless like Greg Newsome falls out of the first round, but I just don't see how that happens. And if he does, he's not. I just don't think he gets to 41. 6 foot plus corners with with speed in the 4.3s, like with as good a tape as Newsome has. I mean, he should go. Or like I said, maybe you take a right tackle. Maybe Liam Eichenberg, Jalen Mayfield are available there. Maybe an Alex Leatherwood. But yeah. Let's say if Liam Eichenberg or Jalen Mayfield are at 41, the line should take them. Because I don't think they signed like a right tackle, did they? This year. I can't remember. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe their tackles are fine. But I feel like they're not. Sorry, once again, I'd planned on doing the AFC North today and I accidentally put NFC, so I'm just sticking to the typo. So, third round for the Lions, 72-101. The Lions very much need... I mean, like I said, they've got needs everywhere. In the third round, you've got corners like Tyson Campbell might be there. Eric Stokes might be there at 72. Elijah Molden's teammate, is it Keith Taylor? Something Taylor from Washington. Really long, athletic corner should be there. At 101, maybe Trey Brown out of, I think it was Oklahoma. Trey Brown of Oklahoma. He's kind of short, but man, he fights. He's fast, really quick, um, elite change of direction. I really like him. Um, if you don't go offensive tackle in round 2, I would say that you could probably Alex Leatherwood could slip out of the second round to 72. I don't see that happening though. This is where you're looking at another tackle at 41, Dylan Radins. That was another guy I was thinking. That was the guy I was trying to remember earlier. If you're going like offensive tackle in the third round, maybe look at or just offensive line in general. Quinton Miners might be available at 72. He might go in the second round. Really great interior player. If the Lions are wanting to improve their interior line, I know they've got Frank Ragnow there, but getting a guy like Quinton Miners would improve their interior line. He can play center or guard. Frank Ragnow can play center or guard. Tackles, you've got Carmen. Is it Carmen or Garmin? From Clemson, offensive tackle. I've forgotten the name of BYU's offensive tackle that's in the draft. I think he's really good. Actually, kind of reminds me a lot of. He's very comparable to Dylan Radins out of North Dakota State. There's so many offensive tackles, like quality offensive tackles. It's hard to keep up with all the names. I'm not used to having to remember this many. And then, fourth, fifth round, and you could also target another receiver in the third round because they need multiple. I say you get that elite pass catcher in the first round, then with one of your picks in the third or your pick in the fourth round, you draft maybe. They do have Quintez Cephas, who was a rookie last year. He's a perimeter receiver, kind of a bigger, stronger guy, not super fast. But maybe get a slot guy. Maybe get a Demetric Felton, who could also help you at running back, but looks like a devastating slot weapon maybe in the third round. Or a Daz Newsome guy in the fourth, or Dwayne Eskridge at 101 or with your fourth round pick. There are a lot of really intriguing like slot type options. 41 would be a good spot for a receiver too if you decided to go offensive tackle or corner at round 1, because really the only like top 10 kind of level prospect at this point seems to be like Patrick Surtain after Farley's injury, although J.C. Horn's right there now too. The Lions might try and trade down. Who knows? But I do. I would say, and every team needs cornerback depth, which is why I've mentioned corners in rounds 2, 3. They should maybe take a look at taking like a safety in round 4 or 5. I've been seeing like Andre Cisco of Syracuse late in the second round. I think that's ridiculous. But if you could get him in round 4, probably good value. Another guy that might be available in round 4 and is from kind of in that region, Indiana's Jamar Johnson. That dude is ridiculous. You'll hear him come up a lot in this range for me. He's one of my favorite prospects who looks like they're probably like an early day 3 guy. I could understand a team that needs a safety taking him at third round too. He's not like an elite athlete, or like he's not elite speed, but he's got good range. He doesn't have amazing range. I think he's best as like your, I guess you could say it at box safety, but as your second safety. Like you have like a guy who's more of a freelancing ball hawk. Johnson can do that, but he's so versatile and so smart that I would have him as like kind of like a move safety. You move this guy around. He's a great blitzer. He's great at at disguising what he's actually wanting to do, and he's tricksy. Um, he has that like that Ed Reed to him. And if he was as good of an athlete as Ed Reed was, he'd be a first round pick. I think he'd be worthy of one. So, like I said, the biggest needs for Detroit, the biggest one that stands out is they desperately need pass catchers. They have a lot of needs. They need to improve at the linebacker position. Linebacker might be something or a spot at 41 too. Like if Nick Bolton is available at 41, I would absolutely. That might be someone that they should run to the podium for. Is Nick Bolton at 41? But I don't know. Maybe they wait and just in the third round, fourth round, some names that could be solid guys. Um, Mick Gorn from Michigan would be an interesting linebacker choice for the Lions in that range. Monty Rice of Georgia, I think, would be a great choice. Pete Warner of Ohio State. But yeah. So with that being said, so we're going from Detroit. We're going to go to... Actually, we got to go this other way. Oh, no. I saw the Raiders. I'm like, I'm already at the O's. And it's like, oh, wait, they're Las Vegas now. So now we're moving down to Minnesota, whose first round pick is at 14. They do not have a second round pick, but they have 2/3. They have 4 fourth round picks. And one of those being a compensatory selection. 2 fifths and a 6th. No 7th round picks. So the Vikings are going to be major players on day 3 of the draft, the beginning of day 3. And they could package those picks and move up, move spots outside of the... Well, and they could use those to maybe even move around the first round. The Vikings are a team I could see trading down to pick up more picks because they've got a lot of holes to fill. And with Gladney potentially getting suspended, that's going to be a big deal for them. But I would say at 14, because I'm not necessarily going to project trades into things. Because like yesterday, I was talking about the Jets. Well, they had traded Darnold, so that which I had run under the assumption that they would trade Darnold. So I had Wilson going too. So I feel really good about that. I say the Vikings at 14. I think the biggest thing for them, I think they should be looking to improve the offensive line and their pass rush. Yes, they have Danielle Hunter, but they've got to improve their defensive line, which for the interior, I say it's like 3rd, 4th round's a really good spot to attack that. The first round, though, I think you've got to look at either Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins, or Elijah Vera Tucker. They might have to move up to get Vera Tucker at this point because he seems to be just slowly just keeps creeping up draft boards. And he had a pretty good pro day. Which I don't know. I don't know if the Vikings really need an offensive tackle though, because I like Ezra Cleveland, who they drafted last year, and his his performance or made them super comfortable in just getting rid of Riley Reef. Brian O'Neill, I think, is a solid young right tackle. So Elijah Vera Tucker would make sense. You slot him in at one of your guard positions and improve and absolutely he's going to put that position on your offensive line at one of the or as one of the best situations of that position in the league. Because I think he's going to walk in. He's not Quentin Nelson, but he's going to walk in and be really, really, really good. So I think the dream for the Vikings would be Vera Tucker getting to 14. I think they probably would sprint to the podium. If not, I would honestly consider going after a top edge rusher at 14. Rousseau, Paye, or Phillips. Personally, Phillips is my number one guy, but I know that there's some concussion concerns that are gonna put off some teams more than others. So I would say get the guy who's used to. Although it's like now you're going to be playing indoors on turf, so the weather doesn't necessarily matter. Except you're going to be playing a game in Green Bay and Chicago outside every year. So maybe Paye being a Michigan guy kind of helps with that, and he's from the region, or he's been in the region. That might be a good move. Though Minnesota's a little ways away from Michigan. So I'd say Elijah Vera Tucker or maybe Kawiti Paye, which this Vikings staff has helped develop Daniel Hunter, who is a speedy physical freak. So now you take a guy like Paye, who's a stronger but still linearly explosive physical freak, and you develop him to be on the other side. So those are kind of like, I think, the two best options there. Maybe you double down on first round corners in back to back years, and you just go you take J.C. Horn or Caleb Farley right there, because that would also be an interesting idea. You can never have too many corners necessarily, but I don't think they'd draft a corner there. So, moving on. So then they have 2 picks in round 3. You got 78 and 90. Let me see here. So let's say I'm going to run off that they went Elijah Vera Tucker in round 1. Because he's rated higher than the edge rushers. So we come in at 78. And we take Patrick Jones II of Pittsburgh. Maybe. I think 78 would be good value if Patrick Jones is on the board. You take him. Or if they're higher rated guys, like if Ellerson Smith, or not Ellerson, Emerson Smith of the University of Northern Iowa is on the board at 78, take him. Cam Sample would be another good fit there. And then at 90, at 90, you address the middle of your defensive line. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to open up a new tab. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull up because I have not finished all of mine yet. I'm going to pull up Kuiper's. That's not it. Boom. All right. I'm going to pull up Kuiper's rankings just because it'll be quick. Rolling down the list here. All right. So we're going to look at his top 10 because most of those guys are going to be... So, available D tackles. So, he's got Nixon and Barmore, I think, in the, round 2 range. Oh, he's moved... Wait a second. I'm going to double check something by looking at some of this other stuff. I think this might be an old one. Because I don't think he has Slater listed as a guard anymore. Let me see what date this was posted. Yeah, so this is his February 10th. He's put out one since then. Which is weird that... Why would it give me, such an old one? Let me... Prospect rankings... That's so weird. Oh, it's because I clicked the wrong one. Okay. Boom. Because I thought he had moved Barmore back up to the number 1 D tackle. And I know he's got Slater as a offensive tackle for sure now. Yeah. This looks more right. There we go. Because Levi's up to 2nd. Nixon's down. So you're looking at 90. And I would say I'm not as big a fan of the USC guys. Although J. Tuilofele in the 3rd round's good value. He's really low on Tyler Shelvin. That's interesting. Okay. Okay. So, let me go back over to boom. All right. So, we're looking at pick 90. Marvin Wilson might be on the board from Florida State. J. Tuilofele. I think those guys would be solid picks. Although, Marvin Wilson seems to... It's like there was a point where people thought he was a first-round pick, and now he's solidly a 3rd, 4th round guy. So maybe he's not the guy you want. If you've got an edge rusher at 78, I would say they definitely missed Linval Joseph. It might be that you want to draft a defensive lineman here who's going to plug the run. If Tyler Shelvin is still on the board at 90, which if he was still on the board at 78, you'd probably take Tyler Shelvin because I think he should be a back into the 2nd round prospect. Dude is big, athletic. For a guy who I want to say he's 340 something, he's really, really agile. And he does provide some pass rush help too. He will push the pocket. And he can collapse the interior of the pocket. And I actually think because of his agility, he has a little more pass rush potential than most guys his size. I mean, there was a period of time coming in the season before he opted out. There were a lot of people who had a first round or potential first round grade on Tyler Shelvin, like late first. Well, I think some people had him as high as 19th. So I like Shelvin just fine. Um, so he might not be available, but he might. I mean, Kuiper's got him as his 10th ranked defensive tackle, which means he might even have him going in the. He might have him as a borderline third round guy. May not even have him there. But it also depends on some people don't believe that you should take nose tackles that high because nose tackles are. I hate saying something's a dime a dozen because elite play at any position is not necessarily a dime a dozen or is not easy to come by. There's a reason Snacks Harrison and Brandon Williams got paid the money they got paid at different points because they were just that good. So I would say if you get Shelvin at that spot, you do it. There's a lot of defensive tackles in that third round range that would be good values. But maybe get yourself a run plugger. If you don't get him in the third, and maybe you don't do that in the third, you've got tons of choices in the fourth and fifth rounds here. And so you're going to have guys like Bohanna from Kentucky who plays it over 360 pounds and is just a rock in the run game that you can get. There's a Florida D tackle or a nose tackle, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who plays in that range too of weight. There's a Georgia nose tackle. Georgia nose tackles are, know how to play that kind of space eating style. And then you've got, I want to say his last name is Mitchell out of UL Lafayette. And he's short. He plays at 330, 340. But I don't even know if he's 6'1". He might be 6 foot even. He's somewhere 6 foot, 6'1". Short guy. I love my undersized D tackles, but usually they're lighter than this. I think it'd be probably really hard to move a guy who is that wide, but also that short. I feel like he'd be really. It would seem like he'd be really hard to move in the run game, and he'd be able to get some drive on power rushes on centers, on or against, or in passing situations. Mitchell would be a really interesting choice for the Vikings. But the definite focus for the Vikings needs to be their defensive line just in general. I think adding Vera Tucker on the offensive line at 14, if they can, would be huge for their offensive line. But I definitely think the pick should be Vera Tucker or one of the top edge rushers at 14. He's because those I think are definitely because of how the draft board is. And there's some really good interior alignment too in this draft. But I think Vera Tucker would help their offense so much in the passing and run game. I think it would be a really smart move for the Vikings. And then I'm just not going to go into, let's see, so 4th, 5th rounds, just start. I mean, they've got darts they can just throw everywhere. You snag a corner, maybe you snag snag a receiver. I can't remember the guy's name. There's this guy out of Stanford, I think. He has similar physical tools to like Chase Claypool from last year, who the Steelers drafted in round 2. You might be able to get him in round 4. If he's available at one of your 4th round picks, I say you just take a stab at him just to get like a chance at a dominant physical contested catch receiver who also has like threatening deep speed. I don't know if he's as fast as Claypool, but he's a big guy who is faster than most guys as big as him. Trying to think of some other things. Of course, like I said, throw a dart at a corner. Maybe throw a dart at a tight end to develop behind Irv Smith Jr., who you were turning over to the number 1 tight end spot on your team to. This would be a good draft to take like a depth offensive tackle. Like there are offensive tackles in this draft who are going to be going in like rounds 4 and 5 who in normal years teams might talk into even or taking in the 3rd round. Or at least there's some 4th round guys who would go earlier in other drafts. I would also say probably take a depth linebacker during this stage. And like rounds 3, 4, and 5, they should be taking multiple players at defensive end, defensive tackle. No reason not to. Oh, and they're going to need a safety as well. Once again, they've got all those 4th round picks. Jamar Johnson, boys, would be a really good fit next to Harrison Smith. Or you get like try and find like a more rangy guy. I'd need to look through the safety class more for that. Because out of all the position groups, I would say, I mean, you've got Morig at the top, and Javon Holland, who probably could go, or who probably should go in the 2nd round. I would say it's probably the weakest position in this draft. If I were to say what the weakest position in this draft is, it would probably be safety. Some people I think would say interior defensive line. I actually like a lot of the mid-round options. I think there's like depth at interior line. I think there's like there's only like a handful of like safeties that I'm like, I don't even know if there's a handful. There's like a few safeties that I like. So, but that sometimes is a hard position to project too. So, or at least it seems that way lately. Safeties kind of become like the running back of the defense. So, we're going to move up to the Chicago Bears. We're going to go through them next. Chicago's interesting. They're puffing up Darnold at this point. They're picking at 20. They probably need to look at a quarterback of the future, but I don't think I think they'd have to move up for one. Although it is interesting, we know that the top 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks, but Atlanta's talking about moving down. Carolina's acquired Sam Darnold. If Denver doesn't take a QB, if Carolina doesn't take a QB, and Atlanta's not taking a QB, we know that Detroit could take a QB, but I don't think they're going to with Goff there. I don't think they're going to do that this year. Unless, well, it also depends. Because I did Detroit. Detroit could take a quarterback. But Goff is young. Still. Particularly by quarterback standards. But if Trey Lance Justin Fields are on the board at 7, one of those guys, or even crazier, Zach Wilson, they might take him. We just don't know at this point. I'm operating on the assumption that they're gonna or that they're gonna roll with Goff. So, at least for this year. So if Detroit's not taking QB, we know that Miami's not taking QB. We know Cincinnati's not taking QB. We know Dallas isn't taking QB at 10. The Eagles don't seem to be taking QB considering they traded down to 12. Looks like they are going to go with Jalen Hurts. And who's at 11? The Giants should, if they're available, but they're not, because it looks like they're going to triple down. It's like but I think they're in this is Daniel Jones's last chance mode with the way they're building their team, like signing Galladay. That leaves, and the Chargers aren't taking QB at 13. Wouldn't think the Vikings would at 14. So you've got like 3 teams in the Patriots at 15, the Washington football team at 19, and Chicago at 20 who do not have their long-term future at quarterback answered right now. Does one of them move up? Does Chicago jump up the board at some point to try and get higher and get a quarterback of the future? They have Dalton that they brought in, but they've signed him to a 1-year deal, and they're puffing him up. But it almost seems like part of the reason they signed Dalton was the potential of putting him in a trade with the Seahawks. But, if the Seahawks were planning on trading Russell Wilson, they could have just, traded him and then signed him themselves. Or signed him themselves. So I think which I like Dalton. I've said that I still like Dalton. I believe he is a solid starting option. I think he's better than Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky. You can laugh at that and say, well, look at the Cowboys last year. The Cowboys were the walking wounded last year. And he suffered one of the dirtiest hits I've ever seen in an NFL game, which forced Ben DiNucci in there. And Dalton was clearly better than Ben DiNucci. You put him in Chicago, and you look at how similar Andy Dalton is to, like, say, Alex Smith. And you look at how good Alex Smith did with Kansas City under Reed and Nagy. You go and you put Dalton into Nagy's offense. You give him a guy like Allen Robinson, who is a legit downfield number 1 receiver. He's better than Amari Cooper. You give him a young tight end like Cole Kmet, a young athletic tight end like Cole Kmet. Dalton was really great, had a really great connection with Tyler Eifert when Eifert was healthy. I think Chicago at 20 should take there are options here, but I think the Bears probably should go offensive tackle if they're at 20. Which that could mean Tevin Jenkins. That could mean Jalen Mayfield, Liam Eichenberg. Maybe Christian Darrisaw falls all the way down to 20. That's a possibility. Which I know everyone, or a lot of y'all are probably like, yeah, but didn't you say Jalen Mayfield and Liam Eichenberg at 41 for the Lions. I'm like, well, yeah, they have like a big range. There's a ton of players who could go in the literally from 20 to 50 that all have like very similar or close grades in that range. The late first to second round value players, there's tons of them this year. Well, and I had Ty McShay's like tier list up. He has 29 guys who fall in that like first round talent grade range. 29, which is a lot. I know you're probably now thinking, well, there's 32 picks in the first round. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that there's 32 guys in the draft who are necessarily like you're excited to draft that. And that also depends on teams. Because some of the guys that he has in his first round, some teams may not have a first round grade on. There are people that have like first round grades on guys that I don't have first round grades on. There are guys that I like that other people don't like. Or at least at that value, or at the value that I like them at. So, with that being said, there's a ton of offensive tackles, good offensive tackles. So, and they could go anywhere in that range. If they don't go offensive tackle, I think going after a edge rusher to go on the opposite side of Khalil Mack would be a really good pick for them. Well, they've got Robert Quinn under contract. I'm being dumb there. I forget. It's like for whatever reason I forgot about Robert Quinn existing there. Well, they do need to rebuild on the defensive interior, but that's probably it's like I mean I really like Christian Barmore, but I don't know if I'd take him at 20. Corner would definitely be another possibility here. They did really well drafting Jalen Johnson last year. This would be a spot like J.C. Horn, Caleb Farley, Greg Newsome would be good values here. I know I mentioned Asante Samuel Jr. I think Asante Samuel Jr. is a first rounder. And this is the other thing. I think Liam Eichenberg and Jalen Mayfield are first round talents at tackle. But there's some people who have him going in the second round. It just depends. It depends on there are three things that factor into where a player gets drafted. The needs of teams, the value teams have those players slated at, and injury concerns that can either move people down boards to where people are willing to take the risk, or whether like they're even on teams' boards at all. Because some teams will take certain players totally off their draft boards. They will not draft them for certain medical or other red flags. So, but with those set aside, Mayfield and Eichenberg, the biggest things are going to be, do the teams who need offensive tackles value them as highly, or like how highly do they value them? Because there might be some teams that are really high on them but aren't really looking at offensive tackles. There might be teams who need offensive tackles that don't value them that highly. They think they're mid-second round prospects. All it takes is one team to say, hey, the value on this guy lines up with where we're picking, and we need him. Or for some teams, it's just, hey, this is the most valuable player on the board. We're taking him. So I think Chicago probably should go offensive tackle here. But otherwise, it would be probably corner. I think those are the two. Well, and you could take a receiver here, because there's a lot of receivers in this range too. You've got Allen Robinson. You've got Anthony Miller, who some people are like, well, Anthony Miller's been inconsistent. I'm like, yeah, because his quarterback play's been inconsistent. Anthony Miller's a good receiver. But you get yourself like a burner, like Rondale Moore or a Kadarius Toney or Elijah Moore, a smaller receiver who can dominate in the short area and break the defense over the top. Those would be good fits for Chicago at 22 or at 20 as well. Then we move down the board. They're picking it, or in the second round, they're picked 52. That would be probably a good spot for Davian Nixon. If you're to go, he might go before that, but I'd say if he's available at 52, Davian Nixon would be a great pick. This would be a spot because the positions I mentioned in the first round as well. If you don't take offensive tackle, Alex Leatherwood might be available at 52. He might be a good pick. Dylan Radins might be available at 52. He'd be a good pick. Corner, maybe Elijah Molden's still available, though I think he might go top 50. Or I know that some people believe he's worthy of a late first. So maybe you're looking at, well, same with Kelvin Joseph. You might be moving into the next tier of corners, and that maybe you're more comfortable with in the third round at that point. So maybe not corner at 52. Receiver, definitely there will be guys available. Elijah Moore, I've seen him all over the place. Like, I've seen some people have him in the late first. I've seen some people have him in the late second. So Elijah Moore might be available at 52. Rondale Moore, because of his being only 5'7" and some medical concerns, he might be available at 52 as well. Some guys that, like Jalen Darden, might fit there, although I think some of the draftnik community are higher on him maybe than teams. I think Darden's probably going to go in the early third, but I would be comfortable with Jalen Darden out of North Texas at 52. But I would say if Davian Nixon's on the board at 52, Chicago should take him. At 83 in the third round, this is probably where I would target this would be where I would target a receiver maybe if I was the Bears. Although this would also probably be a good hot spot for interior line too. Some receivers in around pick 83 that would be good values. He didn't run as fast as some people were expecting, but I like Seth Williams out of Auburn still as a contested catch guy. If Diami Brown is available in round 3, I'd take him, although he's probably going to go in round 2 now. Although he's kind of more like Allen Robinson, but it's not bad to have more than one of those kind of guys. Just asking the Lions, having Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. Demetric Felton would also be a fit, although you've got Tariq Cohen, but I think Felton's a much better receiver, like route runner and receiver than Cohen. And he might even be a slightly more dynamic athlete than Cohen. But Nagy has really liked versatile players like that. Anthony Schwartz would be another interesting one at 83. Speedster, versatile kind of player. Like elite speed out of the slot. And then they've got 4 6th-round picks and a 5th-round pick. In the 6th round, you're just taking stabs like wherever. That would probably be a good place to take like a developmental corner prospect. Maybe rounds 5 and 6. Maybe they don't take a receiver with any of their picks in rounds 1 through 3. Maybe Josh Palmer of Tennessee is available in round 5. Maybe even round 6. But I would say Chicago needs offensive tackle, interior defensive line are their 2 biggest concerns. And then or should I say, like, when I say interior line, I should say like their 5 technique, like 3-4 defensive ends. That's where they need to restock at. And everyone could use another receiver. Everyone could use another corner. But you got to protect your quarterback, and I would say that offensive tackle is definitely their biggest need. Because I believe they're replacing both starters at offensive tackle. And last but not least, we're going to run through the Packers. So there's allegedly a contract standoff with, I say contract standoff with Aaron Rodgers. I think all of the guaranteed money on his deal is up after this season, or it's already up, one of the two. He has several years left on the deal, but typically what happens when all the guaranteed money is gone, the player usually gets annoyed because they have no leverage in keeping their job. Like, if something happens, Rodgers wouldn't be able to get any more he could be cut and he wouldn't get any, the Packers wouldn't be penalized at all for cutting him because none of the money left on his deal would be guaranteed. And he's so good that it's kind of one of those spots that usually, like, bad players, they get cut, good players, they get extensions. Because when a player has no guaranteed money on their deal, a team can be like, well, we'll extend him, give him some guaranteed money, but we'll be able to, like, drop these cap hits and, like, da-da-da-da. You can use them for cap gymnastics. But the Packers, I think, want to roll out till the end of this deal or whatever, or they want the flexibility to just move on to Jordan Love whenever they want. The Packers are playing a very interesting game. And I think a lot of people are like, the Packers need to take a receiver in round 1. This is such a good receiver draft that, they don't, actually. They didn't last year, or need to last year either. Although, I don't know. It's like, do you need to take one in the first round? I don't know. But it definitely would help. But I'm looking at the Packers, this Packers team, and if I'm looking at what I would do in the first round, like what I would personally do in the first round, wide receiver would have to be somewhere on that list. Like, Allen Lazard is a nice player when he's healthy. Marcus Valdez-Scantling is an elite athlete at the position. His hands just aren't great, and sometimes he's injured. We haven't been able to develop Kwame St. Brown into anything. Personally, I would consider a guy like Terrace Marshall or Rashad Bateman. Actually, Bateman has a lot of Devontae Adams to him in his game, in my opinion. I like Terrace Marshall because he's a big, fast, athletic target down the field for Aaron Rodgers. Although they've also been really successful with smaller, faster type receivers. So a guy like Elijah Moore or Rondale Moore or Kadarius Toney would really probably thrive in this offense. Although this is more in these offenses, guys who have really great catch and run abilities, like guys like Toney, um, Elijah, and Rondale Moore have, and particularly Moore and Toney have elite run after the catch ability, and Elijah Moore has, you know, really really great speed too, 4.35, 40, and he's pretty agile. Like these guys or run after catch guys do really well in that Shanahan style of offense. So, and I really like Rondell Moore because he is 5'7", but at 5'7", his like 180, 185 pounds or whatever he's at is a lot heftier than like if he was say 6'1" or whatever. So he does have power in him, along with 4.29 speed and a 42.5-inch vertical, which is insane. So I think Rondale would be a great fit for the Packers at 29. If they don't do that, it's possible they go right tackle to upgrade on Rick Wagner. Dylan Radins, who reminds me a lot of Brian Bulaga, would be a really solid fit here. Liam Eichenberg, Jalen Mayfield that I've mentioned before, good fits. I would also say they could also go corner here. So you're looking at, yeah, they brought Kevin King back. I think Josh Jackson still has a year left. They've got Jaire Alexander, and there's another guy, I'm forgetting his name. But getting a guy like, say, Asante Samuel Jr. would be a really good snag here, I think. Actually, he reminds me a lot of Jaire Alexander. And Jaire Alexander reminded me a lot of Asante Samuel Jr.'s father, Asante Samuel Sr. So, and another option would also be inside linebacker. So right there, you're looking at like Jamin Davis or Nick Bolton maybe to help the Packers at middle linebacker. But I think those would be the. So I'm thinking like wide receiver, middle linebacker, right tackle, corner. Those would be the four most likely. Which that's a lot of stuff, but I mean, you know, I think those are the most likely moves there. You get to the second round, pick 62. Let's say the Packers just continue to not draft a receiver in the first round because it almost seems like at times they just spite people like everyone else in that we know what you want us to do, but we're just not going to do it. So maybe this is the year they swerve now that we're just like, they're not going to draft a receiver in the first round. They actually do it this time. But if they don't, second round would probably be a good spot to see them target a receiver. There you're looking at maybe Diami Brown. maybe Elijah Moore could still be available at this range. They don't go offensive tackle in round 1, and they're looking at a right tackle. Maybe Alex Leatherwood's available. I think it's Christensen is the name of the guy from BYU. Spencer Brown of University of Northern Iowa. He had a crazy pro day. 6'8", like 311 or 315. Quick. Strong, agile. Like he and with easy bend at 6'8", which is not normal. It's not normal to see bend as good as Spencer Brown's at 6'8". Cornerbacks that could be available here, like maybe Eric Stokes, Tyson Campbell of Georgia. Maybe if they don't take a middle linebacker in the first round, maybe Jabril Cox at 62 could be a good choice. Round 3, 92. Now, this would be a good spot for inside linebacker 2. McGorn could be, or likely is on the board here. Monty Rice would be a good pick here, in my opinion. Heck, Jabril Cox could be on the board at 92, too. Those all would be really good options. This would be a good spot for like a slot receiver, or a versatile player like Demetric Felton, Dwayne Eskridge of Western Michigan. At corner, you've got Taylor out of Washington. Could be available at 92. Garmin out of Clemson at offensive tackle. That BYU offensive tackle could also potentially be available at 92. Actually, he's probably more likely that they draft him at 92 and 62. I don't know if he'd go in the second round. And Brown could be available at 92. See, the further you get down the board as well, the wider typical prospect ranges become because the grades are getting much, much closer together. Round 4, they've got picks 135 and 142, which I think are both compensatory selections, or at least one of them is. One of them's a compensatory selection. So round 4, this would be a really good range for or rounds 4 and 5, because they also have picks 173 and 178 in round 5. I think round 4 would be a good spot for them to go after like an interior defensive lineman. I think interior offensive line is pretty well. They've got to replace Corey Linsley. I wasn't even thinking about that. You know, they could at 29 or 62 go center. Or 92. There's several good centers in this draft. I know there are some people who believe like Dickerson and Humphrey could potentially both go in or like have the talent that you could justify a first round pick on if you had a need. And they might not be on the board by 62, because like I think they both could go either late first. One of them could go late first, and the other one would go in the second, or they could both go in the second round. So I like Dickerson better than Humphrey, but Humphrey's really good. If one of them's on the board at 62, the thing with Dickerson is that knee injury he had at the end of the season could cause him to fall. If either of them are available in round 2, I think the Packers should take him. Well, let me make sure that unmuted. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay. So, and there's a guy who I really love on day 3 at receiver. And even if the Packers draft a receiver earlier, they can draft this guy too. But if they don't draft a receiver the whole draft, I really like Cade Johnson out of South Dakota State. Now, he's not so fast, so quick that he creates elite separation. But this guy runs his routes really well. He plays at his own tempo. He has the ability, or he has good hands. I think he has the potential to be just that solid workman-like receiver that could help the Packers, which I know Packers fans are like, but we need a dynamic receiver. Cade Johnson gives you something that Lazard and MVS and Kwame St. Brown don't. Consistency. I think Cade Johnson's a lot like Tyler Johnson out of Minnesota last year, although Tyler Johnson might be a little more athletic. I just think I just believe in Cade Johnson. I believe he's a good player. Another guy that you consider in that range, Josh Palmer of Tennessee. He's more of a perimeter guy. I think Johnson's probably more of a slot guy. Palmer, once again, this wouldn't be a wow pick, but Palmer reminds me a lot of James Jones, whom Packers fans should remember. He's not necessarily like an elite athlete, but he's a really good athlete. I think James Jones is a little bit bigger than Palmer. Palmer just makes tough catches, and he makes big catches, important catches. And I think Palmer can play, and I think he could be a good like secondary complementary receiver for a long time in the NFL for that reason. So if the Packers kind of keep their MO, there's a lot of good receivers in this draft that fill different roles. They have a number 1 in Devontae Adams. That's why they're not spending first-round picks on receivers. It's because they have Devontae Adams. They're trying to build up elite talent at other positions. And that makes a lot of sense. So keep screaming, Packers fans. Keep screaming, but I mean, you look at the Titans offense without a first-round receiver. Well, I guess we did have Corey Davis, but he wasn't our number 1. Our number 1 was A.J. Brown the last 2 years. He was a second-round pick. Now, another like position of interest during this draft might be tight end, but you've got Jay Sternberger. Yeah, he's had trouble staying healthy. They brought Martellus Bennett back, and they have was it Jason DeGura who they drafted last year out of I think Cincinnati. Tight ends tend to take a little bit longer to translate, so DeGura should be a far more usable option this year. They also have, and I forgot, the Packers have Robert Tonyan, red zone monster. So, but I would say, like, for the Packers, your biggest needs, I would say if you could improve the right tackle position, do it. Look at improving, or look at a young center. I think would be probably a really smart move. You need to draft at least one receiver at some point. You should draft a corner at some point. And it's like y'all have the picks to do that, obviously. And probably get an interior defensive lineman as well. you can't have too much. It's like, especially when you're running a 3-4 front, you can't have too much depth there. So yeah, so that's my NFC North draft primer. Um, I guess depending on what typo I make on the title tomorrow, I'll figure out what I'm gonna do. I'll probably do the AFC North tomorrow. So, with that being said, this has been Blind Eye Live for Tuesday, April 6th. I've been your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself. Please, if you like the stream or like the archive podcast, please hit the like button. If you want more, hit subscribe, hit that bell notification next to the subscribe button, switch it to all so you don't miss out on anything. Please leave comments. I read the comments. I want your feedback and your takes. With that being said, appreciate you guys. I hope you have a blessed rest of your Tuesday. I will not be streaming tomorrow because Wednesdays are busy for me, but I will be back on Thursday.